Welcome to Through Our Lands. This is After Elemental.
This is Mubdi.
This is Dominic.
And today we have a few things we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the shelter system,
Yes.
and we're going to talk about foster care system. So it's kind of tied together.
Yeah.
So this is your topic that you want to talk about, Dominic. What do you want to say, starting off?
Well, just about the shelter system today is it's being overpopulated by, I wouldn't say migrants, just different cultures, and the resources is not there for everybody collectively across the board. So whether it's immigration lawyers, healthcare, there's not enough caseworkers in a shelter system to address in New York City. I don't know how it is about anywhere else right now. To address some of the issues. Look at the young lady that killed her kids. There's preventive steps that could have been taken before it actually got there, right? So if a caseworker has 40 or 50 clients, there's no way that she's gonna give proper care, proper services to all those clients. It's almost like a fast food system now.
Right.
And the shelter system just becoming more crowded and crowded with the increase of rent and inflation.
So I think it's a problem with the resources. I think we need more allocating and more resources for people with social uplift, and then other means of destruction, like defunding the police. Like the police, we have more police with a bigger budget than it is for the people who need the services. So I mean, we have what was it? I don't know, it was a couple of millions of dollars for people to to have law enforcement, but not the millions of dollars they have the people to be preventative means before they get into the legal system. And I think those allocates and those resources need to be more directed to the social services to prevent those other ills that cause to lead to crime, like for instance, education and social things that uplift people instead of putting them into a box or criminalize them and put them into a prison system. We spend more money on prisons. We're the biggest country in the world that spends with the biggest prison system in the world, and spend the most money on prisons. But we should take the same resources and try to fix the problems that cause criminality.
Well, that's interesting to tie those together. I mean, I do see the correlation, but when people make a lot of money with locking people up, that becomes an economy on its own. It becomes a money-making mechanism. And what I've seen is that people are not necessarily going to correct incorrect move for the sake of the better good, the greater good. They're going to want to keep making their money. So
Right.
they're like, hey, we're going to keep making money in prison.
But it's the same thing with the shelter system.
So the shelter system, the situation. So with the police, I'll say I don't 100% agree with the concept of defunding it. Is what are you defunding? Like it has to be specific,
Well,
right? So you need police on the street.
Mhm.
You need police to have the tools that they need. But do they need assault tanks from war?
No.
No. Do they need some other stuff they get from war, expensive thing? No, they don't need that.
Right.
Right? But they also do need certain resources, laws, right? In order to go do their job.
I get it.
They need the backup of law. Sometimes they need the backup of community
Correct.
if they're doing the right things.
I say community policing.
Yes,
I
community
think we
policing.
need more community policing.
So I think, like me, I like the term community policing more than defunded police.
Right.
Because if you say defunded police, to me, it's like it automatically creates opposition.
Right, but I'm saying when I say defund, I'm saying allocate the resources in a better way.
So let's say that
The resources,
Yeah.
the resources that have been allocated, like I said, you don't need to buy a tank.
Mhm.
What you need to do is fix this shelter system or this system so you can have a better service that would help the people that are getting caught up in it. So you need better resources
Right.
to help those people and those social conditions that have been plaguing our community.
So allocating the resources in a better way is a great phrase to use, in my opinion. It's not confrontational.
But it also needs to be the redistribution of wealth. And that's the problem, because
Right.
the resources always been going to the top few and not for the people who need it.
Right, I agree. But back to the shelter system. Yes, I'm looking at this play out where we having immigrants from a certain area come in, right, and they're accepted and they're welcomed, and then other immigrants from other areas are rejected. So it's a bias, right? It's a bias where who gets to come here and get the resources, and who got to get back on the boat and go back to their country.
And it's usually the brown and black folks who always been sent back.
Now specifically Haitians.
And
It's almost like a targeted group
Right.
of
Right.
being sent back.
And why is that?
Systematic racism, you know, call it what it is. I have a friend in the shelter system, and he's still in the system. Like it's going through it, and he called me. He said, "Yo, it's just mad immigrants in here. Like where did they come from? Like, you know what I'm saying? Don't speak the language." So it makes the process a lot longer because now you have to spend money for interpreters. You gotta spend money, you know, for different things compared to just the normal people here living in New York that speak the language. And then the whole voucher system, like it's almost a setup, like because people go through the whole shelter system, get a voucher, and now the landlords don't want to even accept the voucher, right? So it seems like it's a seesaw game because you can get a voucher. Once the voucher's over, you got to pay this amount of rent. You don't have the proper education. The mental health really hasn't been addressed. So it's like where you're gonna be at in 5 years, back on the street, back in the system. So it's almost like the proper resources is not even addressing the issue what it really needs to be addressed.
Well, here's I want to jump in because here's something that I see, and I'm looking at it from a business perspective, which is different from a health crisis or economic crisis or a social crisis, right? From a business perspective, if your business is not doing well, you have a few options. One is identifying why it's not doing well and correct it, right? That's one option. The other option might be, okay, this business is just it's not feasible to keep it going, so I'm gonna shut the business down. The other option is expansion, opportunity for expansion. So I was asking myself in my head, why would we just allow a lot of immigrants to come here, right? And to roll out these red carpets of things that we're going to give them specifically and nobody else. And the thing that came to mind was it gives you a reason to justify expenditures. Oh, so now we need more translators. We got to pay somebody. So now we need this. Now our budget needs to increase. Oh, now we have to provide internships for them. Oh, we need people for that. Oh, hello, increase my budget. So it's a business move. So sometimes, like, you trace the money, you find out what's happening, right? So, in my opinion, nobody in their right mind would be like, listen, we're going to open the door for all these people. We're going to give them all these resources. But if it's about a grab for money and you're going to get additional government resources because now you have proven expenditures on something that you kind of ushered in or created or helped create, now you're like, okay, I can keep making money. So I thought about that. If you have a business, you have different options. Well, this is a business. Even though it's in social services and stuff like that, it's still a business. So we probably have business people sitting down like, hey, we could take these, do this for the immigrants, we could do this, do that. Now they got to expand our budget. Justification.
Yeah, but I think we should have more humane and people-friendly systems. So, I mean, based off of, you know, if people are in need and need from housing, because we're talking about now the basic human needs, food, clothes, and shelter, right? Now, for the shelter system, you know, if you're not housed, if you're not have a place to clean yourself, be well, you're going to have mental health problems. You know what I'm saying? And if you're living on the street, you probably you're going to have some problems due to those conditions. And I think the stress of the conditions with happening within the city, with happening within places, cause imbalance. So correcting some of these places and to have a more humanistic or holistic way of dealing with these problems and issues can solve some of the problems that are going on within these systems. Like because of the shelter system, we had a problem with housing. We got a problem with affordable housing. We have these rich or wealthy, buildings being structured that they're not even occupied, but it's some oligarchs tax shelter or pet peeve. They're making billions and billions of dollars off of it, and down the street you have a homeless person that doesn't have any type of housing at all. So I mean, it's a problem with the imbalance and the disproportion of wealth.
Well, it's going back to the systematic, racism, because about a year or two ago, they were sending people, which is a great tool if you want to get people out of New York. They were paying for people to live in Jersey,
Relocate.
right? So they will pay their rent for a year, 2 years. So, a lot of people jumped on it, Section 8, they go, but the trick is you couldn't come back now. You can't come back to New York because now you're a New Jersey resident. So if you couldn't make it out there, right, because you're moving to a whole different geographical area, transportation is not the same, jobs is not the same,
Economics
economics is not the same, right?
Right.
You might have to come back, say, hey, I don't have family all the way out here, right,
Same
to support me,
resources.
right?
Right.
So now I got to come back, but now you're not even allowed in the system because it's like, what I'm saying, it seems like it's technology when it comes to the shelter system.
That's interesting you say that because on the news they had a program and it was, and I did find it kind of strange. It's a home buyers program for people who are on Section 8 and everything, and it was on regular news yesterday or maybe the day before, but you had to move to Jersey. The homes is in Jersey. Now they was like, oh, I live in Brooklyn, and now I'm a first time home buyer in Jersey. And I was like, why in Jersey? Why can't be in New York? And now that you're saying this, I'm sitting there like, okay, I do remember they were shipping people out 2 years ago. So they were sending them out to Jersey. So it's a real interesting thing. Bringing more people, there's a housing problem, right? So do you incentivize other people to leave? Like I was getting letters about, oh, we have this new development here in Tribeca. Um, it costs $9,000 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment, and if you can't afford it, we'll give you a subsidy to move there. I got letters like that, and I was like, what? So I'm looking at it from a Harlem perspective. I lived in Harlem. I grew up, born and raised. And I'm like, this is how they get people out of Harlem? It's a real interesting thing.
This is a part of the gentrification. You talk about gentrification and displacement of people. I mean, they have systems and policies to make and incentivize people to do certain things, to move or to what direction what they do. But I think we have to set our own goals of what we plan for our futures. So I mean, educating ourselves about housing, just think about city planning and development. And you think about what Columbia, even like in a neighborhood of Harlem, you had Columbia University who has a program talking about urban renewal or urban structure. But I don't see a lot of black and brown faces in these places. So we need to be at the table of how our future is going to be determined.
So, but how do you, so like having these meetings, having these discussions, how do you, like, I kind of got ideas, but how do you do that? Because there's no collective thing that we do as a people, right? We don't meet on Sunday and meet at different houses of worship or schools or,
Board
venues.
meetings or
We don't
community
meet and
meetings,
then
boards.
convene and then spread the word to each other. We don't do that. It's like
Well,
we
that's-
have been taught to be individualistic.
But that's what we need to do. We need to be more collectively organized, meaning that if we get together And this is how rent strikes were started, is by people organizing themselves. And this is how, we can gain property or gain some type of economic things about basically organizing ourselves and determining what we see fit to do. Now, if we're not organized and unified and try to have a goal or a objective of seeing ourselves in the future, and the future being uh, wellness and prosperous, then other people are going to plan that future for you. And this is what's happening.
It's also, holding the local officials accountable because they're the ones who's cutting these backdoor deals. When you look at Harlem, the gentrification, a lot of gentrification happen because the local politicians, like, what I'm saying, that sold the people out. Now, people can't even afford to live here. When the Harlem Week, when we spoke to the people, 6 of the 8 people that we spoke to didn't live in Harlem anymore.
Right.
Couldn't afford to live in Harlem anymore, right? And these are people that grew up here, paid taxes, work for whatever amount, but they can't even live here anymore. So it's going back to the local politicians that have these back doors because a lot of these meetings happen, but nobody's aware.
Right.
Like it's a meeting that was supposed to be taking place about what to do with March 125. The proper people was not even on that board to even have a say so in what happened.
Right.
The next 5 years is probably a high rise.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I've had it's no secret that I'm a tenant leader, right? And I just had a meeting last week with 38 other developments, right? And we're all facing the same problems. The gentrification has caused a new group of people to live there who are not us. They don't even care about tenant associations. They only reach out to tenant associations when they want something or when they need something. But there's no participation, right? And then decisions are being made in our community by people we don't even know. We have people on our community boards who live in our developments who are new tenants, but we are not even on the community boards, right? And they approve stuff to come into our community that we knew nothing about, right? So I'm currently battling with stuff like this. It's like we as a people are not at these various tables you mentioned, right? So we don't get to hear what's coming. We don't get to hear the changes that's coming to our neighborhoods. But other people on those community boards, a lot of them who don't look like us, is the ones who's giving the green light for it. They're voting on it.
Right.
Or even
This,
living here.
but this is the whole thing about diversity and inclusion. It's just that we always been the object and not and the subject instead of being those people who initiate. So we have to take control. We have to basically step up and be in the know. And this was like hip hop. It's because you're supposed to be hip to what's going on. You're supposed to be aware and be conscious of what's going on. And a lot of our people are just been sleeping. So we have to recognize what's happening to us. I mean, we're being pushed out, moved out, but we've been here because again, we're going back to this thing about value. Sometimes we don't value ourselves, and we don't perceive our value. And we know we have a neighborhood that's valuable because there's people living in there of all types of influences, but we don't take these things sacred and valuable. We don't take care of your community and change your environment. So I mean, it's not the new people who come in, they see the value, but sometimes we don't see it ourselves, or don't have all the resources to benefit it. But I mean, we don't perceive the value in ourselves, in our community, and our neighbors, and just connecting and building with each other.
Well, but the problem I think is like, I feel like some of these things like diversity, inclusion, it's a double-edged sword. And the reason why I say that is because this was actually said to me at some point. When you have a group who is in control of something, or is the leadership, and it happened to me as a board, they said you need to diversify your board. That means dismantle the power structure and allow other people to come in. So it's a double-edged sword. You need to diversify. You need to include other people. The other people is not black. The other people is not Hispanic. The other people they're talking about are their new tenants. So they want new tenants to be on the board. These are things that like we hear diversity and inclusion, and a lot of times we default to think, oh, that means we're going to be allowed to do something. No, that also waters down your power too.
Well, yeah, but I think when you say like black, I say black is a mindset. Black is a sense of being, a sense of understanding, a sense of awareness that collectively I think we all have, but some people have, because some people may share the same complexion of you but are against you. So I'm talking about the progressive of well-being and collectively building something and growing something in wellness and progress. So in certain aspects of our hurting communities, we have people who are hurt, but we also see value in these people. We can't just discard them. So like with the shelter system, we have people who are going through problems and issues. And some of these issues and problems are caused by external factors, or some of them are internal factors. But to fix these problems, we have to go to the cause of I mean, we need better solutions to fix some of these inequities. And I think some people have solutions that work, but are not utilizing them because they're benefiting off of,
Or not empowered. They might not be empowered.
but they're also benefiting off of people's misery.
Right. But
Like if you empower someone, to have a competent person, or a sane person who is in wellness, to have some property and have some ownership, or learn how to build something they can have, you're building a community, you're building a better person, you're building a better society. But if you cripple the person by not educating them of how to gain property, how to maintain property, and how to have some type of equity in their community, then you're crippling a community. And a lot of our communities have been crippled.
So it's also about establishing independence, right? Because when you talk about the shelter systems, I spoke to a few people. Um, a lot of them lost a house or apartment because of inflation, right? So it's not so much it's that had a city jobs. A person said they didn't get a raise in 3 to 4 years, but rent is going up every 2 years. So now you juggling. Do I eat or do I pay this bill? You know what I'm saying? You're gonna pay rent, but now rent is going up. So it's systematically designed, to have the new people come in, with probably more wealth that they want. And you see this is what happened with Harlem. Like a lot of these apartments and new buildings are empty. Like it's nobody there. It's nobody in these joints. However, this is the new population that they want. When it comes to now the nicer developments, they have a plan already in place because there's a lot of independent organizations that are buying the property now. Like
But
you know what I'm saying?
that's how gentrification works.
But it's
That's
it's
what
going back though
gentrification is.
to the local politicians, right? Supposed to be for the people, but they're selling out.
But I think also like the immigrants coming in and getting these resources has other effects too. Other effects that I would say benefits to maybe American economy or New York City specifically New York economy, right? These people are coming in. These people are going to get jobs. These people are going to pay taxes, right? And not to say we're not, but these people, and then these people will have a deeper sense of gratitude because they received all this help, right? So it's going to go back to this paper that I read in 2015 when I was taking anthropology, and they said America is tired of black people, of American black people. This is what the paper said, and it said because we constantly complain about what America did to us. So what America and corporations will do is they're going to empower and hire foreign blacks because Helping them will cause these people to praise the country and not criticize. I read this bit. So 2015, I read it. I see it playing out. I've had 3 African bosses for me.
Well, it's called the new buffer class.
Yeah. So I see it, but I'm just making that known now. This is not an African. This is the immigrants thing, but it's the same concept. So you help because some people's like, why can't black people get this? Why can't I get a loan? I don't know if I told you. I went on a webinar and I was trying to get business services, and 3 of the companies that I contacted in the from the webinar that was a city webinar said we only give money to immigrants.
Well, we got to look in the historical context. It was specifically people discriminating against people of African descent. African Americans were targeted for disenfranchisement. So I mean, we were the underclass, and banks specifically. We had redlining in Harlem. We had, the influx of our own government was against us. So we got to go to the root of the systematic oppression, the systematic racism that we're still facing, and go through that cause. But my plight is not with like the immigrant who sees an opportunity. My plight is for the structure who denied me my opportunity. And that is the issue that I see manifesting itself right now. We've been here in Harlem, when the bad times, when we couldn't get loans and we still couldn't get loans. I mean, we're now getting loans. You have some banks who are giving certain incentives for people of African Americans to get these loans. But historically, we've been denied access or just due process. And that's the problem that we see, and that there's manifesting because people have ideas to develop and build, but didn't have the necessary resources because the banks weren't lending, or the resources weren't going there. And this has historically been the scenario for generations. And to stop the systematic oppression that's been divulged on our people, we have to collectively come together and build our own way to fight this systematic oppression.
I think that they have this book called How to, and I know about nobody did it, but How to Lie Using Statistics, right? We hear things about, you hear the bank say, they have these special programs, they're going to lend money to African American peoples for businesses and all this stuff. Okay, who did the research to see what kind of businesses they funded? Right? Because I looked into some, I'm not finished my research, not even what type of loans. If you want to do a brewery or a possible a marijuana place, all the stuff that's not helping our people, in a sense, they can get loans for that. But as soon as you want to build something, a general business, they're not really getting loans for that.
Educational, you want to build.
They're not getting loans. So it's to say, listen, we filled our quota. We got a certain amount of you that we giving these loans to, but now we can't lend people money who's doing this that has a positive, large impact. That a brewery is not, everybody know the dangers of alcohol. I lost 7 family members to alcohol. All right. A brewery is not something that's enhancing and improving the lives of us. It's an escape, right? People drink because whatever, they got tons of reasons, but it's damaging to your body. Smoking, damaging to your body. Open up a liquor store. We could get a loan for that.
Independence, empowerment. Like those are things. Like I'll never forget. I think I had tens of thousands of dollars in the bank. I was in my 20s, and I wanted a business loan, and they said no. I took my money out the bank, but I was like, wow, if I wanted a car loan, they would have gave me a car loan. If I wanted
because it put you in debt.
Yeah, if I wanted to get a house, I could have got a house loan. But to start my own business, they said no. So they don't want the empowerment. They don't want the independence.
It's dependency.
They
So like we
want
said,
the
they want this
dependency.
dependency.
And
Well, but that's what they benefit off of.
with the shelter system, it's almost similar to the jail system.
Like this,
Because you think you're coming out better just because you have a place, but if you don't have the education, if the mental health is not addressed, you don't have job skills,
economics,
like you're gonna fall right back
to the system.
back to the system.
Well, it was like I was telling you about that place where in Jersey where they was doing these homes. They showed the neighborhoods where they was doing these homes, and my wife commented. She said that looked like a bad neighborhood. And they was like, we're taking dilapidated homes and we rebuilding them and we in low income areas in Jersey. So I'm like, okay, so you leaving when your area in the city starts to come up because of the gentrification, they reshuffle you to a part that's back to the Stone Age again. You see what I'm saying? So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, it's
Yeah. So I think to combat, we know what problems are. To combat the solution, I think we need, like I said, we need to be at the table. We need to be in the process of replanning.
so how we get at the table. That's a question I asked before.
Well, power receives nothing without a demand. We have to demand it. We can't just be asked for it because obviously they're not giving this to you.
Let's have
They haven't been giving this to us.
Let's define the table right now. Like, what? Give me an example of a table that we need to be in.
Planning, urban planning,
Urban planning. Now,
economic development.
Is there a city department for urban planning? Is there something that exists for that?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So you can go to your city council member.
Okay.
You can go to some of these programs at universities. You can go to some of these banks. Also have mortgage or economic classes that you can get information for, and you can be educated about your financial situation, your credit score, what credit does and what credit can do, business credit versus personal credit, and the whole structure of business. What is an LLC? What's an S corp? What's a sole proprietor? What's a
C corp.
A C corp? So educating yourself on business structures and how cities or governments, municipalities recognize you and see you as an entity is some of the resources that we can use to better our situations and be, like I said, not asking for handouts, but demanding progress or demanding more equity or more of the pie, because we're not just coming for welfare. We're coming to build.
And also being at community board meetings. A lot of people don't be at their community board meeting. Don't know what is happening. So this is, if you're not at the community board meeting, then you don't know what's going on in your community.
I want to piggyback off that too.
Those things are important.
But also you got to understand where people are at. Some people may not have time to go to a board meeting because they're dealing with other social issues that's happened within our community. You know, lack of housing, lack of resources. So, I mean, you're scrambling just to survive, and it may be a board meeting at the same time you may have a recertification interview. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. We have to be in the know, but again, we have to have comprehensive and better way solutions to solve some of these issues.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what both of you said because I'm currently going through this with certain members of the board and community as well. So if you can't make a meeting, you know, that's life. That's understandable. But you have to have a level of engagement, right? So and some people work out where they're always at work, where they're always doing it. And those are not going to generally be the people in the know. But community board meeting is very important. Getting familiar with your community board. They have something because they just told me about it. You can join the community board as a general member. You don't have certain voting rights, but you can still be a general member. And the person I brought here, I didn't say Dominic, sorry. Person I brought here, William, he's the district leader. The district leader can appoint you to advisory boards, and they are parts of advisory boards. I'm talking about hospital advisory boards. I'm talking about economic development advisory boards. So you should know who your district leader is. So and talk to them and support them and ask them if you could be on a board. Like you could tell them your interests and they can say, well, I could put you on this board. I could put you on that board. And of course, it's free. There's no money involved in all this stuff, meaning you're not going to get paid, but you at least get to know about the thing that you're passionate about. So district leaders, you talk about the city council, community boards, all that stuff is very important. But these are local officials. These are your local elected officials. So part of this table that we need to be sitting at involves these are local officials to an extent, right? Getting to know them, voting or doing something. I'm going to say voting, but I recently heard somebody I respect a lot says, I'm not voting until I get my reparations first. And I was like, wow, that's interesting that he said that. And it made me think, but, some people saying, oh, I'm going to vote or I'm not going to vote, but they're still the elected official in your area. You need to still have conversations with them because things could be happening in your neighborhood you have no clue of, right?
And they could be voting on reparations.
You have no clue, but that's part of it. So part of it is being in the know. It's not just, life is not just about you go into your house and you close your door and it's about your life. You live amongst other people and you should know what's going on because everybody else is knowing what's going on. They are able to manipulate or other people is able to manipulate and progress off what they know. But if we go in the house and we turn the TV on and we watching movies or we sitting there in our phones and we watching YouTube videos all day, that's not us being in the know. We're not out there talking to people and all of that. So yeah, to go back to the shelter system situation, it's my opinion that it's being used to justify expenditures, and they're not like when you was talking about moving ahead and moving forward and being humane and thinking about these
Solution,
effects.
yeah, solution.
That would be awesome if all of them thought like that. But to some people, it's a job.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to do as minimal work today as possible and still get my check. Right? And then some people, they have other ulterior motives, right? But I come to find that a lot of people are in these positions for a ton of reasons that I may not have thought about. Right? You and I, we think with a basic, all of us, we think with a basic mind of we got to get this done. We shouldn't treat people bad. I don't know if that's the prevailing thought. I really can't say it is because look at the situation we're in.
And the situation is dire. The men's shelter, got the name of it.
I got a couple of them.
Well, the one that everybody a lot go to. That's they right there on 25th, and then they go on. Is that Randall's Island? Is that the?
Oh, that's where they have them stationed at. We didn't realize
Yeah.
that. Okay.
But a lot of people I speak to say they'd rather be homeless than be in there because it's so dangerous. Right? So it's been like this for years. It's not like the conditions has even changed. So it's going back to what I'm saying is, do they want people to be better off? Or are we just putting the Band-Aid there to say we're doing something, but not really doing nothing?
Right. And I think there's a lot of Band-Aids and a lot of Band-Aids on a sinking ship. And you can't just keep on putting the Band-Aid on a ship with a hole in it because eventually the boat is going to sink.
So that might be somebody's plan.
To sink the boat?
To drain the resources and then sink the boat.
Right.
Well,
I wouldn't put it past the people because you have evil people in high places. So the ill-intended people or the ill-will people are everywhere. So I mean, they may not have the best plan for people, and that's what we have to recognize and also understand you got to do for self because somebody else is not going to do it for you. Somebody may not have the best interest for you of seeing you benefit or seeing you progress because they either gain some pleasure or for keeping you on a certain um, level, or may benefit for may keep you from at a certain level. So you have to have people that want the best for you, that are like-minded, that want to see success for you and are good for you. Um, some people are there, but they may not be necessarily for you and for your best interests. And that goes to not just local people, but also people in higher places, government, city council, or other things. Because you have people who take money from the people that need to, or go against things that may benefit people, but just do just the opposite because they're evil intended, or they have ill will against them. So we have to be uh, understanding that everybody doesn't have the best intentions for people, or they don't want to see people better. So that's a reality. But moving past that, we want to be uh, in the development and planning of our future. So we have to be accountable for it to ourselves.
Okay, well, that's another question. How
Yeah.
to be that, right? But anything you want to tie up with this topic on the shelters before we move on to the foster care?
Just make sure you know, be aware of your community board meetings, who your local politician is, and resources. Because the shelter system in New York City is gonna hit a crisis mode pretty soon.
Oh, it has already been in the
has,
crisis zone.
so there's gonna be a lot of budget cuts, a lot of money that's reallocated, being taken from somewhere else to be put somewhere else just to, you know, support something else. So just be in a know, more or less.
All right. And we're gonna move to the next topic, which is the foster care, which is kind of linked, right? Because you have a lot of these immigrant children who came without parents, right? They came. Some of them don't have parents, right?
Well, everybody has a parent, but they don't have
Their parents are not with them.
not with
That's
them,
what I mean.
or what happened to the parents, or what trauma that caused them to separate from their parents. Was it a problem with the parent himself, the environment, the situations that they were in, and why did they become in the predicament that they in? Therefore, the cause is an effect. So we understand that we have people coming into the the system of foster care because of their situation with their parent. Maybe the parent is in substance abuse. Maybe they're not very competent. They're very not nurturing, or there's not a right environment for someone to grow and prosper. So they put them into a system that may not have the best, better than the situation that they were in. So we got to look at, like I said, the root of what's the cause of these issues, and try to fix it. We're not, we're not future. You can't tell the future, but we can also we can try to make the conditions better for people to be well and prosperous. So having proper food, clothes, and shelter, and proper education of being will help some of these parents that have to put their people or children into foster care, or having issues and problems that they have to put into foster care. There's so many different reasons why a child's into foster care, but we have to try to fix some of these social issues if we can, because we can't fix everything because we're just human beings and we don't know exactly everything what's going on. But if we can try, I think if we know better, we can do better. And I think we have to be in the know of what's the problem of what's causing some of these issues that a child has to be enforced.
Well, you said something earlier about just the migrants coming over here, who coming over here with parents or
Without parents,
without
like, some of these
parents,
parents die in transit.
transit, but it's almost like human trafficking
Or they
goes
flee.
too.
Yeah.
through that, because a lot come over with just a note, and they don't have the proper resources. Once again, they're short staffed, So they got to make an assessment to see if this is even the uncle or the grandfather. And depending on the volume of cases they have, they might let a couple of kids go through the system, right? And go with somebody who it might be trafficking. So the foster care system now is it's almost like the shelter system. However, it's the it's not good because a lot of kids age out the foster care system with no tools, right? There's really no aftercare for them past a certain age, and then they don't really have any skills. So they're just releasing them from all this trauma that they experienced from their young life to being a young adult. I think they let them go at about, what, 21
Yeah.
or 18? Is it somewhere around there? Some places have aftercare, some places don't. So, and some places don't have a follow up. So, if they let you out and you have some type of assisted living, doesn't mean that you have the skills, proper education, cognitive, the wherewithal to even know how to function as an adult.
Mm. Mm.
So, they're gonna fall back into the cracks.
And these are the people who are in our communities and in our society, and who doesn't really have a voice, and people don't really understand. And just thinking about it from my own personal experience, with people who came up and was in foster cares in various homes. I had several siblings who was put into foster care. I had nieces and nephews who was put into foster care. So I'm very well familiar with, and my mother was a foster parent, right? And some of my sisters were foster parents. And the abuse that these kids go through in foster homes, right? The molestation, the rapes, the physical abuse. I mean, it's a heavy conversation. I remember talking to one of my siblings who had he was a foster parent to white kids, and she was saying some real messed up stuff to these white kids.
Well, I
Like,
remember back in the days, it used to be a hustle for a lot of people.
it's still a hustle.
Adopting kids.
It's still a hustle.
Because they didn't want to work. So it's, you get you about 3 kids and you get the government assistance, and that's how they were surviving, but the money wouldn't even be utilized on the child. The child wouldn't have the proper care. It's, unfortunate situation.
I'm gonna tell you, this is gonna sound crazy, but my sister who had these white foster kids was like, they had to use the white bathroom in the house. Like, that level. I'm telling you, I mean, the stuff that some of these, and I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm advocating for white people. I'm just telling you, these kids go through a lot, right? These kids go through a lot of abuse. Nobody really hears them out, right? Nobody really gets to the bottom of it. And I've experienced some very tragic situations with young children who came up through this. And a lot of them is the jail is full of them.
And that's unfortunate. And I think that's one of the issues. Before the foster care system, I mean, they used to have a vetting process before you're accepted to have foster care. I think that they need to have a stronger venting process
Absolutely.
before you can have a competent adult have a responsibility of rearing another person. So
I would say one of the things they need to implement in that process is, if your children are traumatized, you can't be a foster parent.
yeah, so you got to have a
If your
psychological
child is
assessment.
abused, if your children is, you got to look at, because I didn't understand how certain family members became foster parents. It confused the mess out of me.
It's
And even got to the point, I'm gonna say this, even got to the point where, because when you're a scoutmaster, you're a mandated reporter, right? So I was a scoutmaster and I heard something. So I had to call the foster care agency and say what I heard, and they were saying, "Oh, that's hearsay." So I did my job, right? I called and I said what I had to say, and it come to find out that what I did had to say, what I heard, was true. But they didn't investigate it.
because
This is like multiple times. This has happened multiple times with me personally. I've called and said, "Listen, the mother is drunk. The 3-year-old is answering her cell phone. The mother's been out for 2 days, on the ground in the house, somebody need to go there. Oh, that's hearsay because you didn't hear it yourself. Your other sibling heard it. Yeah, but my sibling called me. And what happened in the end is my sister wound up losing custody of her child anyway for the very things I was calling for years before.
It's the caseload.
Yeah,
Like,
it's,
you know,
yeah. Explain that, because I don't think a lot of people know that.
what's case managers or whatever ACS workers or for this BCW, they will have a certain amount of cases that they would be responsible for. At one point, you can have between 15 and 20. Now, you know, caseload could be 50 to 60.
So they don't get proper assessments.
So not only proper assessments, they're
How can you spend time to even know what's going on?
yeah, you got to do visits and all that stuff to follow up. And so it's going back to you calling. Hey, everything okay? Yeah. So if this person's a pathological liar, of course they're going to tell you, all right. Yeah, of course, you're not seeing a household. You're not really getting a report card. You're not speaking to the teachers or the guidance counselor to see how that child is coming to schools. They're coming in with the proper attire. Do it look like they're malnutritious or like you're not seeing that until these tragedies happen and then it's oh my God, right? So that's a need. It's workers. If it's a shortage, because if you got 50 or 60 people, there's no way in the world. Like you're only working 8 hours, right?
So-
And 1 hour is for lunch, right? So,
But it feels like I think for some of them, it may feel like them 8 hours is 100 because of the amount of work. Like me, you just keyed in on the word, and it just I don't know if it triggered me or whatever. But you said pathological liar. When you live with pathological liars, you will be traumatized. I lived with that. When your people in charge of you are pathological liars and they know how to get out of stuff and they quick on their feet, it's traumatic. It's extremely traumatic. So when you just said that, I was like, dang, I ain't heard that word in a long time. But I had to deal with that in my childhood.
and that's what you see. Like it's almost like honest lying, right?
Yeah.
Because even the workers know that they're not doing the work. They know they're not going to these houses. They know they're not making the visits, right? They're gonna write that in a report. This is, you know, it's a good thing now that they're holding workers accountable for kids that get killed in a setting when there's 10 calls, there've been 10 reportings, right? Like there's so many kids that's dying in parents' homes where they already had ACS cases. They already had cases and the proper and due diligence wasn't done. That's because of the burnout.
That makes me think of the story like I told you when I was 11, I was babysitting, right? And there was a girl I used to babysit, and her mother was drug addicted, and her mother gave her to some drug dealers, and they had an explosion in the drug factory, and the girl got killed, right? It's like part of my mind just kind of wonders like what was this child going through, to have a mother who was addicted to drugs and really didn't really think about it. And I told you the end result was after she died, I found out, when she wasn't showing up no more, of course, but after she died, the mother had another daughter. And I wound up seeing that daughter after I babysat her too. But it's just like, I feel like abused children in a way is like really invisible, right? You only hear about abused children when something bad happens. Oh, the person got killed. With my niece, I was in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to prevent my niece from dying, right? And I'm calling them and they're like, it's hearsay. And ultimately she went to foster care and another family adopted her, right? Which is good, but she doesn't know how many times I called. Like, and here's another thing. When I called services, they told my sister that I called. So me and my sister don't talk. And I've called like 4 or 5 times. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like anytime my family call me, because I know what that is. When you struggling, you starving, you scared, and something's happening to you, and nobody comes to help you. I know exactly what that is. So when I was like, I'm looking out for my niece, everybody told me about it. And guess what? I asked my siblings this question: why didn't you call? Because they know I'm gonna call, but you calling me, telling me about it. So there's some kind of mind state of don't tell.
Well, that's
That goes to a root of a culture of like this code of silence or code of conduct within our community. Like there's no snitching, this those other things, but that comes to a lot of other things. A culture of trauma, but a culture of also of being scared and fear.
But it allows the perpetrator to keep doing what they're doing,
Right.
well, it's
which is another
But
complication.
that's the thing about morale and having people who are for you or those people in your corner that are trying to benefit you for your well being.
and it's
And that's
trauma
talk
too.
about healthiness and
This
wellness.
is trauma. Like if you experience something, then you're not gonna speak up, right? So
Right. Well,
you're not gonna, because you don't know what the repercussion might be. So when you look at households and then you look at the foster care, it's a bunch of trauma. Like
I think that's based in slavery, though.
it
As
is,
us, we're
but
trained not to tell.
and a lot of people that probably are in prison that came through the foster system. Can you imagine not being adopted, right? At all. You have that. Why me?
You have that
You,
nobody wants me.
yeah. So you people are getting leaving, and then you might go through the whole system and not have one family because it is a lot to adopt. Like it's not an easy process, and it's not an easy situation.
Yeah, but that goes about self worth, self esteem, and self value. Um, you know, those people who have been traumatized or have some type of traumatic experience and feel of lesser value, they need to have the right resources, the right support system um, to build their self up. And we need better organizations, better support systems within the community. It says it takes a village to raise a child. And we have been having a problem with of this village and this community. And, the different generations had a different means of supporting one another because I think when we all were subjugated to the same oppression, we had a better sense of community because we had to rely only on us and no one else. Uh, that was a good thing because it strengthened the support system in communities, but it was a bad thing because we know that we weren't getting the same resources that we were entitled to or deserved to have. But the thing was it strengthened the bond within the community and the village of but we need more of that strengthening community and strengthening wellness for the sake of children and having that environment because it does take a village, to raise a child.
The point on the village thing, I like during the crack era, you had a lot of grandparents take the kids, right? They didn't go into the system. Like yeah, my mom's generation, they didn't believe the whole going into the system. They would take kids. I'm taking such. They didn't do the adoption thing. They just took the child. Like the child just came to their household. You know, um, they didn't lead into the system because they didn't believe in the system. So they took the kid themselves. I say that to say a lot of a foundation been missing or have evaporated because the elders got older, right? So a lot of kids wouldn't be in the foster system if more people would take their relatives, right? Or knowing that hey, this person is struggling over here. Let me just get that
But
that child
yeah,
and make sure that child is okay.
that's a sense of support and a sense of family, a sense of family values is also. But I also think within our community, we have to have a re-emergence or structure of family values,
Mm.
meaning that we
Good
have
point.
to have,
Good point.
we can, grandmama or other generations who were essential in raising us and in supporting us. They're moving on, so we have to step up and have a reassessment, a re-understanding of commitment to family and values of how we see a family structure needs to go. Because we can't do the same thing that generations uh, prior did, because we have a little bit more knowledge. And so we have to apply what we know to better the family unit and family situation and move forward.
We need family classes. We need some level of training. It could be online, it could be through books, it could be through conversation. We need some level of family instruction because, like, I don't have a family by mistake or I just stumbled into my wife and then we just built a family. This was something that I planned. I studied child psychology books when I was in high school. I read them because I knew my upbringing was wrong. I knew it. I knew of so what I see is that there's not a lot of accountability when it comes to tragic situations. You go to the mother and you say, "Oh, the mother abused their children," and then the mother goes, "Well, I was abused." Now it goes back to this chain of abuse, and nobody says, "I'm sorry. What could I do to fix it?"
Accountability.
Right? There's no accountability. Go to my father and I'm like, "Hey, Dad, you abused me," and then my dad is like, "Well, I was abused." Same thing. So
you gotta
it
break the
has to
cycle.
be somebody say, "I'm sorry that I caused this. What could I do to address it?" And one of the things that was really powerful was my sister, one of my sisters, um, she went through that process with her children, where it was a contentious fight, and the children it says, "You hurt me," and then she feels bad, and now she lashes out because she doesn't want to hear that she hurt them. And then it got to the point where she was like, "What could I do now to address it?" And I said, "Oh, you grew." That's what I said because she was telling me the stories. And I'm like, "Oh, you grew." So instead of reacting to somebody accusing you of something with doubling down in aggression, you heard what they said. And you said, "Okay, regardless if I agree or disagree with the accusation, they feel this way. So their feelings is legitimate. Let me find out how I can make them feel better." And that's what she did.
That's a good thing. Especially admit that there's a problem, and then you try to find a resolve or solution to it. And I think this generation that's coming up, I think they have a better awareness of, and sometimes better communication of what are their triggers and what the dislikes and their feelings. That's a good thing. And I think it needs to grow from there of more solution based uh, things of how it could be a better resolve and how it could be a better unit of a family structure.
I think the house of worship should take the initiative with the whole family healing thing. And I'm just saying that because they have a capture audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they got to capture audience. Initiatives, small things could start in small pockets because we have to reestablish family values, like because family look different now, right? You can have
It's a modern family.
two men, it could be a family, two women, it could be. So doesn't matter the makeup of the family values have to be reestablished, especially in the Black community, because as of right now, we have no values, right? Graham, somebody said that the days of the kids baking cookies with grandmas is over, right? Right. So you're not gonna. So because there's grandmas that's 50 years old. So if your kid go to grandma's house now, she might get backwoods and and henny bottle. Like that's what's gonna be at the table. It's not gonna be the old grandma. So we have to try to bring and reestablish some type of family values back because that's the growth process. when you tell somebody, hey, you wrong. Because if there's no values no more, right? I can't tell my nephew.
There's no wrong.
I can't tell my nephew that's not the right way to do it. Right? Because I ain't got no values. So if he living foul, yo, get that money. I don't care if you knocking this man in the head. I don't care if you selling dope to the people. There's no values anymore. Get it how you get it.
So morality, but let me ask you a question: is morality intrinsically tied to religion?
For certain people.
Okay.
For certain people that believe in that type of system. Because we know religion have done plenty harm to people because it's almost like pimping. Like, you know,
I'm gonna quote like Andre 3000. He had a verse that said, "Sin only depends what you believe in, and faith is what you make it." That's the hardest things on Instagram. So, is what's your perspective? What's your outlook? What's your moral compass? And this is because going to predict. This is going to predict how you interact with your family values, and everything like that. So I think again we need to have a reassessment of what's family values and a family structure and a family unit. Meaning that some things are going to remain the same. Like truth came to stand the test of time. What's true then is going to be true now, and it's going to be true tomorrow. So we got to stand on some basic truths like doing to others as how you do it to you, and you can find this in religious teachings. You can find this in other, means of moral compass of where you get your guidance. If you a Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, or if you practice Europe or any type of traditions, there's still some hardcore values and truth that could be universal, and that you can go anywhere in the world. These truths are going to come to be true. So if you base your structure and on your unit and your value system on these truths, then you can build from there. But it has to be based on truth, and those that common nut or shell, or that those value systems are going to come from basic truths, and we can build units, family structures based on that. So whatever you get that from, whether it be from religion, whether it be from your community, whether you get it from just a positive being on the street, or if you look at nature, you can you're gonna find those truths, and I think we need to base it from there.
I have a song on my album called that I just forgot. Take the Game Out, and the hook is talking about seeing the view from the front of the bus as opposed from the back of the bus. So when sometimes you see only what you see because of your perspective, right? But when you start to understand, like we were talking about, bigger picture as opposed to smaller picture earlier, I think it was off camera, we were saying global and local.
Yeah.
You have a local war and then there's a global war. You may only see reality based off the local war because that is your current thing you are 100% committed to and engaged in.
That's your worldview.
Right? It's your worldview. It's local. But once you understand that you're having this war, but there's pockets of these wars, and then there's a whole bunch of these pockets of these wars, and then it goes out to other countries, then you start to be like, dang, I'm just having I'm having, this might be level 1, right? But there's level 50, and I haven't even gotten to level 50, right? Your perspective of morality, I believe, in everything that you believe, your faith is based off what you're going through. So certain people, every year they read a book, every year they fast, every year they do, it's because every year you grow, right? And each year you do something, it has a different meaning because you grew. It's not supposed to have the same meaning for 50 years, right? But for people who have a moral compass without being religious and doing it because of based on humanity, based off this is right because this, they talk about this in philosophy, hedonistic, utilitarian, different perspectives of belief in being based off the greater good for a certain amount of people. They talk about these things, right? So that's why I asked you about morality and religion. I'm going to say that most young people are not in houses of worship.
No, I
They lost faith, right? Because of what they saw. So you have religious people who don't live up to the ideals of the religion. They misrepresent it.
Yeah, but I think that's true, and I think the most religious people turn people away from religion.
Yep.
So we have to be conscious and aware that your connection between you and the Creator is your connection. It's not no one else's connection. It's you and you. What's your personal relationship with the Creator? But those people who are just people, or so-called religious people who inflict or try to promote their religiosity on another is, and saying how this is how it should be. No, it's just how you perceive this particular thing. It's not someone is any hierarchy as though one's better or worse than. We all creatures. We all been created by the Creator, so we all, are human beings. So our relationship and our belief system should make you a better person and more humane in dealing with other people.
Yeah.
So I think if you have a sense of a higher being or a moral compass, it should make you a better human being and dealing with your fellow human being.
But I also say that even if a person doesn't have that concept of a higher being and they believe that there's no God, right? Because I've met a lot of people like this, but they say, I believe in this because it's right. They have a sense of certain actions being right and wrong. They have a sense of it, right? You still, my opinion, they start a part of this human family, even though they don't believe what you believe, but they do have an understanding that certain things should not be done.
Yeah, I think that's just like universal law.
Yeah, but it's also going back to family structure, right? So you said earlier about just people that's religious. If you religious, it's once you get older, you're gonna stray away from that. So you're not gonna even pass that on to your kid because if you have to go to church 4-5 times growing up, once you're old enough to leave the house and get your own, you're traumatized from that experience, right? Because it wasn't properly done. It wasn't, you know,
You were forced to do it.
yeah, forced to do
a
it.
choice.
You're not gonna do that with your child. So
This just
the family structure is essential on how morale come about, values come about.
Well, your perception of religion change over time because if you are in it and you realize, because I've read all of the religious books so that I could remember the major religions, and it always talks about this personal thing, personal. So personal means that you don't have to go to this place to have this belief, right? It's in you. And then you don't have to go through an intermediary to communicate. You could do that yourself, right? Because that means you don't have to pay nobody, right, to do this. And then a person who have studied may have a different perception of a section that you read. And because you have a different life, you're going to see it different from your perspective. So all of that plays into effect. And then you're going to realize that, oh, well, it is personal. It's not ritualistic. I've learned that it's not a ritualistic, it's a personal thing. This is my understanding because I had these unique things happen to me. And this thing resonates with me and it sticks out. And I see this. And the person you talk to may have had a different life and can't even see what you're talking about because it doesn't relate. Right? But everybody still has their right to believe in what they believe and practice what they practice.
Yeah, and I do believe that that's a good thing that everybody has to win. But I think we also share a sense of consciousness, a selective sense of well-being and togetherness. And I think because every individual is an individual, there's no other person like you. You could be an identical twin, and still not think alike and have the same thing. So it's no or same personality, because you are you, and that's what makes us unique. And this is what, my belief system and my religious practices or ethos worldview is that, your connection is your connection, and that is what makes us unique. Because I believe there's only one creator, and he creates everything in creation, even myself. But we all are connected to this, and if we can understand that and agree on that, we can work together and try to fix some of our own issues, because we can just first look in the mirror and recognize our issues and try to, you know, um, help correct ourselves first. But once we have that self correction, we can have a reflection of how we can help others. But that's comes from an internal uh, a realization and an internal perception of oneself. So know thyself is what this was saying.
So do y'all want to wrap up anything with the foster system?
Well, yeah. Well, I want to tie back to
Foster
the
system.
fact that you have the foster care. A lot of so veering off into the religious conversation and the faith conversation and family conversation is because a lot of them may have be far from that. Now, I don't believe in this. You can't tell me nothing because of their experience, right? And I'm gonna say the biggest mistake of people who have faith or believe in something is trying to convert somebody or convince somebody else that their position is the right position. Rather than if I have a belief or faith in something, I don't need to wear it on my sleeve, right? I just know treat this person with respect and let me see how I can help them. I don't have to have a religious conversation about it. I'm just moved to do that. And I think some people get turned off because they hear people come out and say, "Well, now you got to do this and you got to do that," and then and to take this pledge or whatever it is, and a person gets turned off because as a person who came through abuse and you hear people talk like that, it kind of makes you feel like, well, where was this when when it's happening to me?
Triggers.
Right? It triggers you. And then now your wall goes up and now you ball your fists up and now you gotta bite down on your teeth and grind through it. Because now you're not gonna hear the good that's coming out of whatever else they said that followed that statement. You're gonna be like, that didn't help me when I was going through it. Nobody, so where's this you talking about? Where is it? So how do you reach these young people, these people coming through the foster system? How do you reach them? Like, cause I'm gonna tell you what I did on my own time for free, pre-pandemic. I used to go to these agencies and they would bring them in a room and I would have a conversation about life and say things that they was like, yo, I never heard nobody talk like you before. And I would tell them because I've had a lot of traumatic stuff happen and a lot of stuff in my life, but I came out positive. How did I came out positive? I was just having conversations. Listen, I know nobody probably ever told you this before, but boom, this is what I learned. And I know that you might think this is boom, 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 but boom. And they're like, yo, I respect that because nobody ever talks to us like this. Sometimes people see people go through stuff and they don't even acknowledge their trauma. They don't even acknowledge, or they give some I want to say stupid cookie cutter solution. Oh, you just need to have sex, or you just need a girl.
Right, but
That don't fix trauma.
yeah, but that goes back with I'm talking about truth. And if you stand on truth, and if it's truth to yourself, if you're doing truth to yourself, you'll be honest. And people appreciate honesty and truth because you're standing on it. This is my experience, and this is how I dealt with it.
But just from a decent human perspective of yes, you say that because even that, you don't want to compare traumas, right? You don't want to just tell us just worst terrible things. I just recently had this and it was weird, and it was kind of weird. But I spoke to a group of young men and told them some of my background, and then told them where I am, which I didn't expect to be where I am. But at the end, the young men came up to me and they wanted to have more conversations. So I was like, listen, I used to walk with my head down. I had no confidence. I was messed up, right? Because this, boom, boom, boom. And I explained it, and talked about how I actually tried to run away from home. I talked about my suicide attempt. I talked about it all, just to kids I didn't even know, right? And I'm like, I'm a college professor and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I feel this way and I have children. And it was like, what? Wait, you just told us all this stuff and now you're telling us I didn't, because I'm in another place. I don't feel sorry for myself, right? I don't feel this, I don't feel that. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is you might be going through something within the ballparks of some of these things I named. A struggle is temporary. Suicide is permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Well, I gotta do bring you in.
Mhm.
I gotta work with some kids coming up soon.
Mhm.
Couple tried suicide, but I think that people are not being honest anymore, right? We're not sharing our experience with the young people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a conversation with somebody. Generation X don't want to get older, right?
Mhm.
We don't want to be looked at as the elders, right? When we are,
Mm-hmm.
like you understand what I'm saying. So that honesty they respect more than anything,
Right.
because it makes them say, "Hey, I'm not alone. I'm not by myself. I'm
Right.
not different. There's somebody like me." But that can only come with sharing your story and being honest.
And that's why I share my
And
story.
because everybody got a mask on now, right? Rappers act like they rich and they really broke.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Females act like they this and they sleeping on an air mattress. Everybody got this illusion going on about something else. And social media created that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why the young generation are so depressed. Because they see something, they think that's real. Like that's not real. That's once the camera go off and they say cut, they're going back to their normal lives.
Right.
But for somebody to say, "Hey, this is my honesty, this is my truth, and I stand on this," that's what needs to be shared more. For people can start to heal,
Right.
because we all face adversity, and younger people today, I believe, face more adversity because Generation X that suffered trauma is still not dealing with it,
There you go.
right? So if you're adult and this is the child and you're acting like me, how can you how can you leave me if you still acting like me?
I had a conversation with my college students just to wrap this up. Just last week about relationships because there was a situation, somebody brought a relationship situation and it was not positive, right? And they were saying what they were saying. And I said to them, I said, listen, I said, you talk to a guy who thought I trained myself to be self-sufficient, meaning I don't need anybody, right? I don't need a wife. That's how I brought myself up. That's how I raised myself up. And then you realize you always need somebody, right?
People need
so
people.
You train yourself. Yo, I could take care of myself. I could cook. I could clean. I could. I don't need nothing. I said, and then when I found the person, it was a challenge for me to undo my own training, to even admit that I needed them, because it made me feel like I was being a sucker. So I had to deprogram my mind to say, nah, you really in this. Like this is not something that you could keep at a distance and function, because now you married and you're in long-term relationship. In this long-term relationship, now you're intertwined. Like I told him, I said, listen, sometimes it's scary that I start a sentence and she finish it. Or I think that I want to pick up a certain kind of food and she texts me and say, could you pick up this food? I said, that's scary to me because I've never been connected to a person that's like that in my life.
It's called bonding.
But it exists. So I told the young men in the class, I said, sometimes, we stupid. As men, we stupid. When you find that person, it may be hard for you to tell that person, oh, like, I really like you. Like, because you feel like you're gonna be played. That's my fear. But to be able to have the conversation and to get past that, I think that's where the younger generation is at.
Right.
Something happened where a lot of our hangups was removed from them. For some reason, I don't know exactly what did it, But it did it. I said, y'all are more in tune with your emotions than we ever were. It's not buried. We buried ours.
But I think that's progress.
Yeah, it's great.
It's learning from past and trying to correct it and fixing it, and being in tune and being in the hip, the hip hop. But I mean, being aware of your emotions, or aware of your surroundings and your state of mind, the state of being, is a positive thing. And like I said, connecting with another person. Like I said, we want to think we're independent, but we're human beings are built codependent. I mean, we're dependent on each other, and understanding that together a group is stronger than an individual. So we have to have that understanding of community and make sure that we extend that sense of community so we can be better, stronger human beings.
Well, the culmination of that conversation wound up to some homework I gave them, which I didn't give them the answer. I said, young people to me are very intelligent, but you're missing wisdom. And you need to know the difference between the two. And I left them at that. And they was like, yo, this boggled their mind. But I don't mind talking to young people, like you said, you got something from you. Learning from them and learning from them as well as imparting information. Sometimes you be a fly on the wall, you're gonna learn, right? Because they're smart. But how do you get this wisdom to them? How do you get a game plan? How do you get an end goal? How do you get them to see that there's still a light at the end of the tunnel? You might have to figure it out. Might take a little, growing pains to get to that light at the end of the tunnel, but it's there, right? That's, to me, the humanity part, right? Being part of this, part of the human family, and noticing, okay, this group is hurting. How do we help them find relief? Right? And this is why I do what I do. This is why you do what you do. This is why we do what I do. It's not about the money, right? It's about the work. Because I have children. Who are they going to marry? Are they going to marry other messed up people who don't know how to figure this out and then repeat a cycle and continue a cycle? Or are they going to marry somebody and go somewhere I can't even imagine them being because it's not within my wheelhouse to see because of where I came from? You see what I'm saying? So that's the whole point. But anybody got to rap? Anything you wrap up? Or I'm gonna say, check out my album Platinum Shackles. It talks about these kind of things, right? My album Platinum Shackles is online, and I want to thank Dr. Boyce Watkins for giving me a shout out twice on his platform for the album. It talks about these heavy hitting things. It's not just a typical album that you hear today. Is tackling some heavy things. So check it out. And my hip hop is my therapy. Like that's what it is for me. The stuff that I learned collectively, I could put it in a rhyme form and put it out, and maybe it could save somebody's life. And I just want to say, rest in peace, Wolfie. Wolfie's a gentleman that I met who had just came out of brain surgery, and he heard me do this song called Rise, and he said it inspired him. He lived a few years after that. But I want to make music that inspires people. And I have a line. I say inspire the leaders, the people to make positive leaders, right? That's what I'm saying in the songs. I'm talking about this stuff. So sometimes it takes bearing our soul and putting down what we're going through, right? To connect to somebody else who's going through what you're going through.
Right.
And then they know they're not alone, because one of the biggest problems of this is the loneliness you feel. So I'm trying to put that out in music, right? And connect with people and seeing, how we can heal and how we can move forward. But this is After Elemental Through Our Lens.
This is Mupti.
It's D Chorus.
All right.
Peace
Peace.
through our lens.